Hi everybody, I'm Bree the Plant Lady, checking in with my last video for 2023. Now, I had someone ask about all the different Trachycarpus that we have growing in our two properties, and I thought this would be the perfect video to be able to share with you as we close out the year. So let me turn the camera around and show you exactly what plant I'm talking about. All right. The windmill palm, Trachycarpus fortunei, is really the hardiest non-native palm that we can grow here in central North Carolina. Now, we've got this one planted right here at our Airbnb, and this actually was planted about 12 years ago by myself with previous neighbors who, of course, wanted to have a palm tree in their yard. And I was growing these at the time from seed during my tenure at Camellia Forest Nursery. And what was really interesting about the windmill palms that we were growing, they were actually selected after a really big cold snap in the early 80s, where temperatures went, I think, to like -7. And these Trachycarpus were the only ones that didn't die. So the seed was collected, and now for, 40 years, this is the primary kind of windmill palm that is grown here. So some might ask, why Trachycarpus, a native to Asia, instead of native palms to the US? And well, the answer is simple. I specialized in growing Asian native plants when I worked at Camellia Forest. So our focus was on growing, broadleaf evergreens native to Asia. And of course, Trachycarpus fits right into that category. It's also just been one of the most popular and easy to grow palms for this Piedmont, North Carolina region. Of course, we can grow native palms like sable, but only sable minor. We don't really do very well with sable palmetto here. I'm not a palm expert by any means. I love having them. But even back in 2011, when I was getting my garden established, our winters were significantly colder. We were really having a much more realistic zone 7 cycle where temperatures would go, down to near 0 degrees. And getting Trachycarpus established was really challenging. So that's actually why they're planted so close to the house, over there and over here. But what's interesting here is that I had originally planted a set, and there was another really big one right here. And in 2020, it died very suddenly. It had an infection that got right into the meristem, and it just died very rapidly. So we cut it down, and that's why there is a pot there. And this was always much smaller. And at the time I planted it, you have to realize these were 1-year-old seedlings. They were in 1-gallon pots. So they were really small. To be honest, I kind of anticipated, since that other one died, that this one would too. It's really not in an ideal place at all. It's like I'm always having to cut the fronds off because it gets in the way of getting to the front door. I wish that it would be that I had planted it farther out, but I'm also not willing to try and transplant it, because one of my suspicions about the death of my other Trachycarpus, which was here, was when we had this sidewalk put in during the pandemic in the summer of 2020. It was right after that root disturbance that Trachycarpus died. And so I don't trust myself to be able to transplant successfully, and I really do love having it here. However, around back, I have one in a much more logical place. So let me show you that. So as we round this corner, and of course this was also planted as a small 1-gallon, and it's just amazing how much it's grown. But you can see this one doesn't have the issue with a staircase right next to it. So I've been able to leave a lot of the lower fronds on, so it has a much more impressive look. And of course, we've got some Spanish moss, which was sent to us by a friend in Charleston. And it really I think it looks really romantic right here on the edge of our brick patio. And well, it's definitely one of my favorite plants in the garden, native or non-native. I think that you kind of can't beat the look of a tropical palm tree, even when you live in a not so tropical area. Now, to give you an idea of what they look like starting off, and this has been in the ground for probably a year, but you know, you can see they're small when you first start growing them. And eventually this will get quite large, and well, I planted it here with the intention of kind of having the palms kind of converge on this path as it tightens around this corner. Now, I mentioned native palms, and here is an example. This is Sable Minor, and this was actually the first palm that I ever grew when I moved to North Carolina. It doesn't really develop a stalk. It's much lower to the ground, and you know, this is essentially what it does. It's just got this great foliage, and I love it a lot, but it definitely doesn't have the same feel as the windmill palm or the Trachycarpus fortunei. So an interesting thing about windmill palms is they're dioecious, meaning you have plants that are male and you have plants that are female. And so far, all of mine that have flowered are male, and I don't get any seed set. So you do need to have both present for cross-pollination in order to get seed to grow out new progeny. And to be honest, since I'm not running a nursery, I'm kind of relieved that mine don't set seed, because I'm not sure that I would be able to not collect it and sow it and pot it. And I don't really need that many more. You see, they take up a fair amount of space, and yes, they are reliably hardy here in central North Carolina. You know, they're planted all over the place, all through Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, and they really are, I think, one of my all-time favorite Asian plants to include in a landscape. And as I mentioned, if you don't have both male and female, you don't have to worry about them ever becoming invasive, because they cannot set seed. So that's actually really to your advantage if you're concerned about seed set. One of the other things that makes Trachycarpus such a great plant to grow is its adaptability. It'll grow in sun or shade, and once it's established, it's really drought tolerant. This is definitely one of the plants that I love having in my home garden, and I highly recommend to other people living in the Southeast US. Despite the fact that it is Asian native, it is a really well-adapted, non-invasive plant to include in your garden. Well, I'm wishing you all the very best, and I hope that you have a safe and happy New Year's Eve, everybody. See you next year. Thanks for watching.